bills are piling in and the prices are going up. Gas, electricity will all cost more.
I'm putting everything into my energy bills.
Even with no tumble dryer, no dishwasher and rationing use, energy at her home costs more than the rent.
Yes, food has gone up and mortgage has gone up and national insurance has gone up and transport has gone up and everything else has gone up, and they are all problems. But at the centre of this is that monumental rise in energy.
The coming months could be catastrophic for those least able to afford it.
Over 100 health leaders have written to the Chancellor. They say rising energy prices will cause a public health emergency.
The standing charge being increased so much is horrendous. If you cut your energy usage to zero gas, zero electricity, your electricity bill is £165 a year and your gas bill is £99 a year. The system is broken.
I've got nothing. I've got 77 pence in my bank.
My children have a bath pretty much every night. So I've actually got an electric heater that I put by the bathroom door because I don't want to pay for the rest of the flat to be warmed up whilst they're having a bath. We have the bath, then we come out of there, and then I bring the heater in here. This is quite a big room to heat up. They've got a onesie on so they're nice and warm. I don't think their bedroom needs warming up because they've got the duvet once they get to bed. So as long as they're warm whilst they're here and in here with me, we don't really put the heating on unless we have to. So I was using a tumble dryer to try and get the clothes done, and it was an extra, I don't know, like £4 a day or something. But if you use that twice a week and then in a month, it's actually quite a lot. So now I'm weighing up whether to put my radiators on to dry my washing and keep us warm. So having a house covered in damp clothes and not really anything I can do about it. But as long as the kids are warm and and they seem fine, I've got blankets and I just put a blanket over me.
So we know that a large part of the cost of living crisis is energy prices, and the sort of trigger was this huge increase that occurred in April 2022. Now, what you may not know is that there is a cap on the per unit energy. That cap is higher if you've got a prepay meter, and basically it is only the least well off that are in prepay meters. So the least well off pay more for their energy on a price that's regulated by government, which is extraordinary. Today, a smart meter allows the company to say, actually, you're behind on your bills. I'm going to convert you into a prepay customer and change your tariff. Now, if that happens, I advise you to go to CAB. There are ways you can stop it. But actually, eventually, they're allowed to do that. So you go from when you are at a point of difficulty, the energy company is at liberty to say, that's very much your problem. I'm going to make sure that I'm kept okay.
Almost 190,000 court applications were done in the first 6 months of this year to force people onto prepayment meters, where tariffs are higher.
Tens of thousands of warrants are being rubber stamped by magistrates in minutes. Now, energy suppliers are supposed to be obliged to consider whether or not somebody is vulnerable before disconnection. I would argue that everyone on a prepayment meter, especially this winter, especially in the middle of a cost of living crisis, is vulnerable.
I was told by the Housing Association that I could only have a key meter. If you don't put money on there, you don't get your gas and electric. It took me 4 years of fighting with them to be able to get a proper meter. So a perfect example, 1 month, I actually looked at my bill and I paid more in standing charge than I actually used in the gas and electric that they supplied. Because it was in the summer, no gas, and I was like, this is ridiculous, how is it £80? And it was because of the standing charge. And it took 4 years for me to get that changed.
Workers from an energy company, their aim to get in and force the installation of a prepayment meter. After a few minutes, they started to drill through the door.
It's very difficult to disconnect people. But once you convert people to prepay meters, they disconnect themselves. And when you sit in a food bank and you have a cup of tea with people, you have this conversation which goes around, at what point of the week do I disconnect myself? When is it okay to have the key card empty? And we shouldn't live in a country like that. That should not be the case.
We need to rediscover an aspect of that prophetic tradition that is rooted in righteous, holy anger, which I think we see Jesus expressed in the temple vicinity when he overturned the tables of the money changers who were doing business. And I think we need to discover that again, that can help us to campaign and move out in a way that will help us to agitate and speak prophetically and speak openly. It's something we need to rediscover.
Writing letters to your MP is a really important step, but we can go a little bit further than that as well and visit our MP at their constituency surgery. Lots of MPs will hold those on a Friday, perhaps in their constituency, where you can go and drop in and visit them. Getting to know our members of Parliament is absolutely essential. To be able to have an open and honest dialogue with our representatives in the parliamentary space is a way that churches can be missional in kind of going upstream and working with people who are in that position of power to change things, to ask those bigger questions, to dig a bit deeper.
Everyone wants a decent place to live and one that doesn't eat up all their income.
Mortgages have become unaffordable because rising interest rates.
The best mortgage that we could find was about an extra £400 per calendar month. So we've had to make the difficult decision to put a house on the market and sell.
Rents are going up too.
My landlord's got in touch to ask us about a 40% increase in our rent, which we're currently being evicted over.
The social housing list can be as long as a decade.
Every 28 days we have to move from room to the room because the hotel policy.
Well, I think the real housing crisis is that we don't treat housing as a basic human right.
The kind of unspoken crisis over the last decade has been a gradual but sustained increase in the number of people in temporary accommodation, which is kind of the benchmark kind of general homelessness figure. So almost certainly 100,000 people tonight, including children and families, in temporary accommodation. And the use of temporary accommodation that in my lifetime I thought we had kind of won some of those battles, really, things that we had taken for granted, that you don't put children and families in B&Bs, but you try and get children and families out of temporary accommodation as quickly as possible because we know it's so damaging for families. 50 years ago, 40 years ago, that probably would have been social housing they would have been placed into. The truth is you're pretty unlikely these days to be placed in social housing because we're essentially rationing it because we haven't got enough social housing. I spend a huge amount of time working with fantastic people in church-run night shelters across the country, and yet I'm not sure what we as church have to say about the 100,000 families tonight who are in temporary accommodation, in accommodation that's not suitable to have a fulfilling life in. It's very hard to do most things if you don't have a roof over your head. You can go back to every night and it's warm and it's secure. There was a poll from that the Guardian commissioned Opinion to conduct, and it asked who people thought was responsible for the housing crisis. A majority of people thought that immigration was the key driver for the housing crisis. But the second highest, or second biggest proportion of people thought that foreign investors buying up properties in the UK was the biggest driver of the problem. But what that poll really tells us is that a majority, actually an overwhelming majority of people, think the housing crisis is nothing to do with them, not their fault, nothing to do with how we invest our money, keep our savings, pass on wealth to our families. And I think that should trouble all of us actually. We must all bear some responsibility for this because we all, and I think we as church should be more, should be able to say that a bit more. And we should really be encouraged to think about what our role is in kind of perpetuating this kind of this poverty really. Because if you are in a stable housing situation, you know, you're having a look over your shoulder most of the time about what's happening to the price of your house, because it's how you are going to probably pay at least the contribution towards your later life costs. It's how you are probably going to pass on any kind of wealth to your children. And as long as we have that kind of system where we're all kind of, once you're on the ladder, we kind of, it's difficult to help anybody else onto it because you've got so much literally invested in that endeavour. And that fundamentally is why people don't like to have housing built particularly near them, and why where people have investment properties, you know, you charge a market rent and market rent goes up year on year. Our kind of mission is to support the church and Christian groups in England and Wales more generally to get alongside people experiencing homelessness, but also to do something about the root causes of that.
Our advocacy must go beyond Western apologetics, because again, yes, it's good to have an opinion on something, to say this is where we stand, this is what we believe about this and that's great. But our engaging with public policy must be robust in a way that we can engage the government.
Thurgood Marshall once said that the measure of a country's greatness is its ability to maintain compassion in a time of crisis. If a church is struggling to pay its own electricity bills, to what extent can it really be expected to throw open the doors to many other people? But if a country's greatness is judged on its ability to maintain compassion in a time of crisis, so is that true of the kingdom of God? But it isn't something that we can withdraw for while we navel gaze at our own challenges and our own struggles.